why are I look at your policies, I see secure the borders, bring jobs back. I look at the Democrats and many Republicans, and it's foreign war and foreign expansion.
That's right.
What is that?
I think it's just a failed mentality. It's crazy. You can solve problems over a telephone. Instead, they start dropping bombs. I see recently they're dropping bombs all over Yemen. You don't have to do that. You can talk in such a way where they respect you and they listen to you. Victor Orban.
Welcome to the Truth Over Comfort show. Today's returning guest is Kelley Vlahos, who's here to talk about the developments in Yemen. She's previously been on to discuss the Iraq War, the neocons, Ukraine, Israel, and more. Kelley, if you could just lay out to people the developments going on with Yemen now, kind of going back to the Biden administration, what is the reason for all these bombings? Who are the Houthis and who are the UK and mainly the US bombing Yemen for or as a threat to?
Okay, well, I'll start with the Houthis. The Houthis are a militant group in Yemen who have been fighting the government there for many years, for over a decade now. Their conflict is over internal issues with the previous government. As a result, Saudi Arabia got involved, United Arab Emirates got involved, the United States got involved back in 2014 in helping Saudi and UAE with weapons, fueling, intelligence to fight the Houthis. It was a big failure. So we're talking tens of millions of dollars that the United States put in to the bombing campaign against the Houthis for almost a decade until the Biden administration, and the Houthis are still standing and they're running their own government in conflict with the recognized government in Yemen. A lot of people died. A lot of food aid and other humanitarian issues had proliferated. It was one of the worst humanitarian crises of that period. And so that's just to set the table that these Houthis are pretty battle hardened and have resisted the United States and bigger powers before militarily. So let's fast forward to the Biden administration after the Hamas attacks on Israel on October 7th, 2023. Israel responded by airstrikes in Gaza, incursions in Gaza massively, as you know, killing tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians in Israel's effort to, quote unquote, destroy Hamas. Many across the Arab world had opposed this action, have been pretty vehement about Israel's apparent neglect of civilians and the proliferation again of a humanitarian crisis there. The Houthis were the only ones who apparently were going to do anything about it. And beginning fairly early in the conflict, I think I'm going to say this November 2023, the Houthis started attacking with rockets, missiles, and drones merchant ships that were traveling through the strait in the Red Sea. They were attempting to block shipping in the Red Sea. Now, as you know, much of global shipping goes through this strait or Hormuz and other straits in the Red Sea. And the blocking of them, the attacking, the fragile security situation that had resulted after Houthis started attacking these merchant ships, global shipping did take a huge hit. The Houthis have said, we are only attacking merchant ships that are linked to Israel. We want to send a message that until they stop the civilian carnage in Gaza, we will continue to do this. The United States responded by saying, well, it's our obligation to protect shipping in this part of the world. And they engaged Operation Prosperity something. I can't remember the exact name of it. Prosperity Resolve or something like that. It was supposedly a coalition of a number of countries that did not include Gulf states. The Gulf states did not get on board with this coalition. I think they got on in spirit, but they have not been helping the United States deflect these attacks. You might wonder why. They are worried that they are going to kick a hornet's nest by getting like the Saudi Arabia and UAE specifically and getting involved again with the Houthis. So they've stood back. I think they've allowed some of the basing, their bases to be used, but I'm not even sure of that. So I don't want to be inaccurate on your show. But let's just say that Operation Prosperity Resolve, or whatever it's called, is pretty much U.S. led. I think the U.K. has engaged in some kinetic attacks on the Houthis over the last, I think it's 18 months now, but it's mostly been the United States expending billions of dollars now and very sophisticated weaponry to deflect very unsophisticated weapons coming from the Houthis, who remain a very scrappy militant group. But that is it. They're homegrown. They make their own rockets. They make their own missiles and drones. They do get their technology from the Iranians, but there's a big question about how much money and actual weapons they're getting from Iran. The U.S. has maintained that they are a proxy of Iran, but really at this point, I think that they're basically out there freelancing, doing their own thing, and they have actually done a very successful job of legitimizing themselves by showing that they can go up against a major power like the United States. They can put the United States on the back foot. Throughout all of this, I believe only 4 people have been killed, 4 merchant mariners with these private vessels that have been hit, and 2 service members were killed, but not in a direct hit by the Houthis. But when they wanted to raid a ship, they drowned, unfortunately, in the Red Sea. So it's mostly been the disruption of the shipping, and there has been some, obvious damage to some of these ships. At least one has been sunk. There was one that was detained by Houthis, and the entire crew was kidnapped or detained forcibly by the Houthis for 14 months or some long period like that, which obviously is not pleasant. But they let them go alive. So this has been largely a success of the Houthis. Fast forward to the Trump administration comes in and they say, well, we are gonna get even more lethal on the Houthis, and they start engaging in an uptick of airstrikes like none other. I mean, it blows away anything that the Biden administration has done. This started in mid-March, right about the time that the Israelis broke the ceasefire in Gaza. Just a sidebar note, when there was a ceasefire that started in January 2025, brokered by the Trump administration, the Houthis stopped their attacks. They did what they said they were going to do. There was a ceasefire, they stopped attacking. Israel starts, or rather violates or ends the ceasefire, starts attacking Gaza again, blockades all the food, sends in troops, and the Houthis start attacking, which prompted this massive retaliation by the Trump administration, which has been ongoing for weeks now. I don't know what the death toll is.
Question: so with the timeline there, because from my memory, and I didn't follow it day to day, but wasn't it that the Houthis said Israel, after Israel announced that they was blocking all aid, the Houthis demanded that they would open up aid, otherwise they would attack. Did the Houthis attack before, or did the US then attack them in response to them just saying that, or was it that the Houthis did resume attacks then the US? Who came first? I guess
I would have to check that out, because I think it would probably be a matter of a 24-hour period. So I don't want to say either way that it was the United States attacked the Houthis even when the Houthis just threatened to resume the attacks, or if there had been an actual missile. I mean, I know that they hit Tel Aviv a couple times, or I'm sorry, they launched attacks against Tel Aviv a couple times, and they were intercepted. So, but I'm not completely sure about the timeline there. All I know is that ceasefire ended, this thing was on, and the United States has not stopped hitting Yemen. They're hitting Yemen proper since March. I want to say it was the March 15th or somewhere on that weekend is when this all engaged. And so far, the Houthis continue to launch their own attacks. They've claimed to have taken out a few MQ Reaper drones. The United States has not acknowledged that, but it's getting very expensive. It's up to $3 billion, according to some reports. And there's a lot of concern now that the United States is expending a lot of its precious missile defense capability on this small militant group when it could be just putting all of its energy into getting another ceasefire. And so there's a lot of question about whether or not this is the U.S. role to protect the shipping, whether it needs to be engaged in such a major kinetic operation in order to go after this group, whether it's depleting its stockpiles after 18 months of missile interceptions. You know, you have to take in mind that these missiles are around $4 million on average each, and the missiles, they're also the missiles that they are the bombs that they are sending over with our F-18s, and then we have 2 carrier groups now in the region. So all of this is costing the United States a lot of money, and there are even questions within the Department of Defense. Officials are wondering if we are losing sight of our priorities.
What do you make of recent reports about kind of what happened in Syria, where they took advantage of what was happening on the ground with Israel and Hezbollah, that certain UAE-backed forces in Yemen are thinking about a ground offensive in certain areas, and apparently it could be backed by the US and the UAE, although it is denied. What do you make of those reports? Has there been any more developments since that first article?
I haven't seen any more developments, but I could say this is absolute folly, because it would just reignite the civil war that I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, from 2014 to the Biden administration. This is the thing. You had a civil war there in which the United States did back proxy forces. It did back UAE and Saudi Arabia, and it didn't make a difference. The Houthis sustained, and they thrived from it. They are amazing fighters. I don't say that lightly. I've talked to many experts on this. They don't give up, and they're amazing fighters, maybe some of the best in the world. And the United States thinks that because it's big and strong and has a lot of expensive, fancy weapons, that it could destroy it. And that's not going to happen. So what you're going to have is another civil war, which is going to create yet another humanitarian crisis. And honestly, we're probably already creating a humanitarian crisis there, because we've been bombing ports that food is supposed to be coming into. And you could say, well, the Houthis shouldn't be using those ports, and they shouldn't be hiding among the civilian population, and then the civilians won't get hurt. But guess what? Where did I hear that before? I hear it every day coming out of Gaza, that somehow it's okay to blast away at civilian population as long as the quote unquote enemy is somehow dispersed within. And I see the Trump administration is doing the same thing by justifying hitting population centers now in Yemen. And all it will do is it will bleed our resources. It will make Houthis stronger, and it will hurt the human civilian population in Yemen. And it's just going to be a replay of what happened during the Biden administration and Trump administration, the beginning of the Biden administration. If that's what they want, that's what they're going to get if they think they're going to do some sort of proxy ground operation in Yemen.
I mean, this time it could be even different because before it was the Saudi-UAE war, the UK and the US backed it, as you mentioned. But this time, the Saudis and the UAE aren't really that interested in getting involved, especially the
Right.
Saudis, because the Houthis started attacking their oil fields basically, and actually be able to hit Saudi Arabia. You know, before Saudi Arabia and the UAE had the advantage, the Houthis started hitting them back. And in 2021, we had the ceasefire between Saudi Arabia and Yemen after I think it was 377,000 people was said to be dead from the UN, mainly under 5 diseases, cholera, etc. So this time they don't really have the Saudis. So I know we're running out of time here, but you're saying, you know, this is going to lead to draining resources, more death and stuff. But what do you think actually is the military strategy going forward? Because is the US being able to keep this up? And if the Houthis carry on attacking shipping and Israel, you know, what is the US's long-term plan here? Like, will they go for a full war against them? Or, you know, as you said, the Houthis' demand was the ceasefire. It went in, they stopped attacking. You think the US would maybe push for a ceasefire to stop both ends, but they're clearly not going to do that. So where do you see this going militarily-wise?
Well, I mean, on the one hand, there is no strategy, or there is no stated strategy here. And the Pentagon has all but acknowledged that. So I think what you're seeing or hearing in the public is that the United States thinks that it is exerting or maintaining deterrence by issuing this huge kinetic campaign against the Houthis, or establishing deterrence. So what you've heard from the White House spokesperson and others over the last few days is, when asked about this, they say, "Oh, well, Biden, wasn't establishing a deterrence. So what we're doing by striking the Houthis as hard as we are is establishing that deterrence, sending a message to the Houthis, but also Iran, that we mean business." Well, that's a bunch of BS, because the longer that they do this, and the longer that the Houthis can show that they aren't destroyed, they still have the ability to shoot rockets, missiles, and drones at American assets in the Red Sea and at Israel. The worse the Americans look, the weaker we look. And so it is having the opposite effect. So they say this is about deterrence. They say this is about sending a signal to Iran, but they're really not articulating a strategy about, like, what would victory look like over the Houthis? What is the end game here? So I think if you ask military strategists, they would say, well, it could go on forever. And we've done that before in recent memory with Afghanistan, and to a certain extent, Iraq. We are still battling al-Shabaab in Somalia, for example. We are still battling ISIS in Syria. We still have troops there. We're still engaging in airstrikes and raids there. So it could go on as a low-level war for a long time. But like we said, we are expending very expensive munitions. And after 3 years of sending everything we got practically to the Ukrainians in their war, and then shifting over and expending all these weapons in a direct conflict with the Houthis, on top of the fact that we have given Israel at least $17 billion or more in weapons and aid. At some point we've got to take stock of what we have left and how quickly we can replenish it, because the most important thing is U.S. defense and being able to defend our own country from future fights. There are a lot of people inside the Pentagon who want to pivot to Indochina and get ready for a big confrontation with China. A lot of experts are saying right now we can't do that because we've spread ourselves too thin. So there's what may happen because of hubris in the Pentagon, and there's the realist look at it, which is we can't do this for very much longer.
Yeah, I appreciate you've got another interview, so I'll let you jump off. But thanks for coming on and just giving like I guess people these days are quite lazy with interviews, so maybe a nice short, sweet interview, sound bites of a little rundown will be easier on the palate. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Kelley. I appreciate it. I point everyone to the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Check out their work. You mentioned stuff about Somalia there, Yemen, etc., etc. They do everything internationally wise, foreign policy. So everyone head over there. But thanks for coming on, Kelley. Apologies
Yeah,
for the
absolutely.
technical issues we had, but we got there, I guess, a little bit.
And and also don't forget to check in with responsiblestatecraft.org, which is the magazine of the Quincy Institute.
Perfect. Well, thanks for coming on, Kelley, and I'll speak to you soon.